Hello there. My name's Tim Spector. I'm an MD and a professor of genetic epidemiology at King's College in London, where I've been running twin studies for the last 28 years. And the last 10 years, I've got really into gut health and nutrition and written a couple of books on the subject called Diet Myth and Spoon Fed, and have got really interested in personalized nutrition and helped co-found the company ZOE that's based both in London and in Boston that provides personal nutrition and is available in the US. And it's a real great pleasure to be here to talk about my favorite subject, which is all about microbes, the gut and the gut microbiome. And so I'm really looking forward to this.
Yes, well, Tim, welcome. And those of you who know me, I'm Dr. William Li. I'm a physician, internal medicine, vascular biologist, and author. And it's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with somebody who's brought worlds together. I think that the medical world, the traditional medical world, and the nutrition world have for too long been separate entities. And looking at the gut and looking at the interconnections of the gut and the immune system in particular, I think are it's an opportunity to kind of forge forward. How did you with your background, how did you actually come into interest in nutrition and gut health?
Well, I've been studying twins for 25 years and looking at the genetics of many conditions, about how similar identical twins were to non-identical twins. We have about 15,000 twins that we study regularly, so it's one of the biggest data sets in the world. And it was only really the last 10 years I started being more interested in why identical twins who are like clones, they have the same genetic material in every bit of their bodies, and they're raised, they lived together for 18 years, why they ended up often being different, why one would have cancer, the other one wouldn't, one would have an autoimmune disease, the other one wouldn't, one would be depressed, one happy, one overweight, one skinny. And so that really got me into this. I'm trying to understand this puzzle, saying, if I can discover that really could be a clue to why everyone gets diseases that at the moment we can't explain. And so that journey took me from genetics, where I was, done most of my training and found hundreds of genes and, helped my CV along the way with all those papers in Nature, etc. But wanted to do something a bit more meaningful to really tease this apart. And I looked at epigenetics, which is how you switch genes on and off. And I thought that might be the solution. But it turned out that was fairly small effects, relatively. And it was when I did about 10 years ago, the first twin study of the microbiome and I did this with a group in Cornell, we discovered that twins had very different microbiomes. They really were hardly more similar than you or I. So that to me was the aha moment that said, if that's true, the microbiome could really be this amazing link between nutrition and our health, and why we've got so much of our nutrition facts wrong for the last 20 or 30 years. That was this missing piece of the puzzle, like we discovered a whole new organ in our bodies, a new, like just finding we had a second liver, for example, that suddenly explained all these amazing things that is totally new to medicine and science. And so that really was that was the journey for me. And I got more and more interested in the microbiome. And at the same time, a bit like you, I found that going away for a while and writing books on the subject really broaden your mind about the whole area. And because we, as doctors, we tend to get rather narrow in our fields and specialities. And most of my colleagues are extremely narrow and they never like to go out of that comfort zone. But you go away and write a book for the public, suddenly there's no limits, and it's a very exciting time. And so during that time, I really sort of put some of my ideas together, and that led to this whole idea of the real key importance for me of the gut microbiome in pretty much all age-related diseases, and the key interaction between our health with something that, unlike genetics, you can absolutely modify, and we just got to learn how to do it. And we have the medicine really at our fingertips. And that was what I was struggling with before with this genetics and epigenetics. All you could do was really blame your parents, and you could only get so far that way. So that's really where my passion for nutrition came about, because we'd understood this science, and suddenly it became from the most boring area of medicine, the one that is taught least in medical school, and only the worst people used to go into it, to one of the most exciting, cutting edge areas that we have now.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that you and I share this versatility of interest in science, where I've worked on vascular biology and cancer and vision loss and COVID, and part of it seems like what you and I share is this idea of looking for common threads as the basis to be able to actually lunge forward into new discoveries. What's interesting about the microbiome, I think, is that it's one of the common denominators, one of the common factors in across diseases that might seem otherwise completely unrelated. Whether you're talking about brain health or mental illness versus digestive health versus metabolic diseases versus even something like cancer. When you boil the Pacific Ocean away, you kind of see how those islands are interconnected. And the microbiome seems to be one of these interconnected pieces of the puzzle. How do you go about studying that? Twins are a powerful way, because you would think that so much should be the same, certainly from the genetics perspective. Can you talk a little bit about the tools that you have found most effective in studying microbiome?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it all really came from the genetics revolution. So we were really floating around in the dark before genetics came along. To study microbes, as you know, back in the old days, we used to culture stuff in little plates of agar and wait for bugs to grow. And of course, only 1 in 100 would grow, and you'd miss most of them. You'd actually miss all the interesting ones and just get these really nasty bugs that kill people. Everything else, you just know, well, they're commensals. We don't know what they are. We'll just throw them away. And that's how we were taught in med school. And it wasn't really until about 10 years ago they had sufficient genetic techniques to start pinpointing the genes in the bugs that you could pick up with the same methods that we'd look at for genetics of disease, that we started to get this picture of all these amazing bugs that are living inside us and what they can do. And so it's only really been the last 2 or 3 years that full-scale sequencing of every gene in every bug put together in what we call shotgun sequencing has allowed us to get this full picture that now gives us 80% of the bugs in our guts has been revealed. And to do that, you need not only massive sequencing capacity, but you need to be scalable and cheap, and you needed massive computers to also do it, to like this giant jigsaw puzzle to put it all together. So it's like it's thousands of times harder than doing the human genome, because you're dealing with thousands of different species of bugs and parasites and even now viruses and all kinds of other stuff and fungi. So it's really been that has helped us. But we couldn't have done it without going through the pains of the genetic revolution to get there in the first place. But and I went through that, so it was fairly easy for me to convert from being a geneticist to a microbiome expert, because you're using the genes to identify them. But they're not just their genes, that basically they are chemical factories. So the way I see the microbiome is this series of these amazing chemical factories that produce thousands of different metabolites, chemicals, vitamins, enzymes, things that just drive all parts of our body. And the genes will tell them, program what they do. So it's putting all that together in this big scale with this sort of artificial intelligence type approach that is all the technology that only recently has become possible. And just to give people listening an idea. I mean, to get your microbiome fully sequenced with shotgun sequencing, probably 7 years ago would have cost you $10,000, something like that. Virtually unaffordable, and you couldn't do big studies at all. And now, if you do it at scale, it's around $100. It's quite amazing, really, what we're going at. And you can learn much more from your gut microbes than you can from your genes, in my view. And I'm talking as a geneticist. So in terms of your health, much better to know what's going on inside your gut than actually inside your genes.
So because nutrition is so close to every single individual, and food has immediacy, so something that we share or we learn about a food could be applied to our health almost instantaneously with the next decision we make. What you're talking about is deep science, new science, and it's based on incredible technology, based on genetics, artificial intelligence, and the ability to actually look at small molecules. I'm sort of thinking through to the listeners and viewers of this, where does somebody go to get involved with microbiome research, to figure out how to actually get their microbiome sequence? Like, how do you convert what we're talking about now into something that anyone can actually do something about?
Well, that's a great question. And that's really what we did when I founded this company, ZOE, about 5 years ago now, with two internet entrepreneurs who came to see me after I was giving a book talk. And I said, listen, we can convert this early science into something people could use, but we do need some money to do it. And you guys have got to find some money. Otherwise, we need to be based on science, not on marketing. And that for me was really crucial. And so amazingly, these guys got the money, millions of dollars, and we did these amazing studies, which are called the PREDICT studies, which took thousands of people, gave them identical meals, and tested their microbes and looked at combining their microbiomes, the differences between them, plus their responses to food. And so put that all together with these new technologies, not only the microbiome, but the technologies of the continuous glucose monitors that are now suddenly on the market and give you, readings every 5 minutes in your blood sugar without pain, and blood testing of metabolites and lipids and things in your fingers that you can do at home. So all these things now you can do at home, this giant science experiment. And the key is you put it together. I think the mistake is always thinking there's only one element that is going to sort everything out. But we all know in medicine, life's much more complicated than that. And you need all the inputs. And so that's what we learned from our studies, is that everyone responds very differently to food. So normal people react 8 to 10 times different to the identical muffin we gave them in terms of their blood sugar, their blood insulin, the amount of fats floating in their bodies at 6 hours, and the inflammation that causes. So I know in your book, you talk a lot about inflammation, but we didn't know before that study how much it varied between people with an identical meal. And I think that was that aha moment for me that said, we can take the science, but then it's only be useful in terms of personalizing it if everyone is different. And it turns out they're even more different than we'd thought. And even identical twins respond differently to the same food. And I think that also that's a sort of wow moment that everyone can understand and say, well, if identical twins are different, what about me and my neighbor? What about me and my husband? Maybe that's why these diets don't work for me. Maybe that's why I'm getting one a risk of cancer and the other one isn't, because we react differently to the same food. And if we can unravel that with the microbiome and these very simple metabolic tests put together with big computers, then suddenly we're in a new era of medicine where people at home do these tests, nothing to do with doctors and clinics and expensive equipment. People can do this and then read off information on their mobile phones, and suddenly it's a game changer. And I think this is this is where we are. And this product, we've been going for a few months in the US, and so far the results are amazing. We're getting incredible results on the ZOE product now, both in terms of people not only losing weight once they control these peaks and understand more about their microbiomes, but energy levels particularly are really high after it, as people start to flatten out in a way their metabolism that they hadn't really thought about doing in a way. And I don't think we'd really realized the potential for it until we did the studies. So I think it's opened up whole new areas. And this is really just the start, because we're just scratching the surface of what we can do now and trying to fit the foods to optimize the metabolism to then help the microbes also continue that whole feedback loop. So it's very exciting.
So the idea with the kit that can be sent to any individual, they can gear up to be able to have these non-invasive, easy to test systems. The information comes back to ZOE, and then how do you make those recommendations? I mean, do you look to try to lower inflammation if it's higher? Do you try to change the microbiome if it seems to be the wrong population or the type of bad neighborhood? What type of practical information are you able to feed back to the individual?
Well, we basically come up with like 3 basic scores. So we're looking at foods that are going to reduce your sugar peaks and stress of insulin, foods that are going to reduce your lipid levels after a meal so that you're not left with lots of fat particles hanging around in your blood vessels for a long time. And both of those are linked to inflammation. So we know that from these studies, which, I should say, unlike most other companies, we publish all our studies in major journals, and we've had 2 papers in, Nature Medicine, which is, one of the top journals in the world. And we've, have about 20 other papers ready to go. So we like scientists out there to know about it. We're very transparent. So you got those 2 metabolic aspects, which are really overall, we think, reducing inflammation and stress on the body just by giving you different food choices. And then the third one is how to optimize your gut microbes so that we can select foods to eat that will enhance the good bugs that are associated with good health and cardiovascular outcomes, and to suppress the pro-inflammatory bad bugs that we've also shown are bad for you. So it's those 3 elements together that we put together into summary scores, so people can then look up any food or meal and rank it, basically, so you can start making choices about whether you should be eating pasta or rice, or whether you should have, like me, I used to eat lots of bananas, but, suddenly found that apples and pears are score much better for me than bananas, and given up granola, and I have yogurt and all kinds of other choices.
And does it make you feel better to have made those choices?
It does. I mean, I obviously, I'm testing myself all the time, so I can see the actual readouts. But if I didn't have that, I mean, I do find after changing my breakfast, for example, I've got much more energy, and I'm not hungry like I used to be at 11, 12 o'clock in the morning. And I can often skip lunch, if I've got a busy day in the hospital. So I've really found it much easier to keep weight off and keep my energy levels up, realizing that these foods previously were giving me not only these spikes, but also these sugar dips. And we published a paper in Nature Metabolism showing that it's the dip that 1 in 4 people have that actually is driving hunger and fatigue levels in ways we hadn't even dreamt about before. And that if you can work out whether you're a person that dips and which foods make you dip, you can understand all that. And of course, just that simple experiment showed us that 2 people given identical muffins, 1 dips, 1 doesn't. One's going to eat another 300 calories a day compared to the other one. So the idea that all calories are equal, that single experiment just shows it's nonsense. You've got to work out what type of person you are and which foods really suit you, so you can start eating to optimize your metabolism. So it's a fantastic experiment, and it's so great to be a scientist doing this and seeing it actually changing people's lives in real time, as well as everybody contributing to the science. Because the nice thing about these ZOE studies is that everyone who goes in, gives their data back to the research, so we rewrite it up. We work with scientists all across the US and the rest of the world, and the more data we get, the better the predictions are, the algorithms are, the more precise we can get it. So it's a win-win sort of scenario at the moment, with this combination of commercial interest and also science and medicine.
And an opportunity to allow everyone to get involved with the research and contribute their data for the greater good, which is, I think, very, very exciting. Since your background is in rheumatology, and the bread and butter of rheumatology has to do with inflammation and the milieu of immunity and inflammation. What have you learned? What are you thinking about in terms of looking at the microbiome, all those factors in nutrition you've just described, in terms of immunity and immune defenses, since that's something that suddenly, unexpectedly, has become the kind of almost the focal point of almost every doctor, and actually every person walking around is now asking questions of about their immune system that perhaps we wouldn't have before the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to be very blasé about patients who used to come with their various ideas about which foods made their arthritis worse or better. And I've sort of, I'll take it all back now if I could. But I think we didn't really understand the personalized nature of it before, that it's quite possible it was happening, but on a very individual level rather than everybody. So that's why the studies were never really clear cut when you looked at food allergies and autoimmunity, etc. But we know that the gut microbiome is absolutely crucial for our immune health, and the gut is the center of actually the immune system. I mean, it seems strange, but the gut lining, that's where all the immune cells are, and so they're interacting with our microbes, and the chemicals they're producing from the food we eat is going straight to these immune cells on our gut lining. And this interaction is absolutely crucial to prevent food allergies and stop us getting autoimmune diseases. And so we know that all the autoimmune diseases are related to a dysfunction of the gut microbes. And so they're all conditions we can improve with better diets that are targeted to improving the gut microbiome. And that's why even microbial transplants, fecal transplants, work in things like ulcerative colitis quite well, which is quite amazing, really, that they work as well as the really powerful drugs. So I think we're on the tip of this journey that is really going to start revolutioning the way we deal with these immune diseases. So it's an extremely exciting time.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you because, and our conversations opened up so many ideas in my mind. But think about the harsh medications that we as doctors have been taught to prescribe to patients with autoimmune diseases. Some of them are indeed life-changing in terms of a beneficial way, but many of them actually have some significant and serious consequences, including bad side effects. And the opportunity to be able to use a tool that is already part of the body's toolbox that we just need to understand better, to be able to right size our microbiome, to be able to help immunity is so exciting to me. The other area that I think is very exciting is the emerging interconnection between the gut microbiome and cancer, and not just the diagnosis or appearance of cancer, the incidence of cancer, but in fact the response to therapy, because immunotherapy for cancer as one of the biggest advancements in cancer research in the last 100 years. And yet, not everyone responds to immunotherapy the same way. And this has thwarted the practicing oncologists. And clearly, there must be some clues within the microbiome that we can actually try to take non-responders and help them become responders.
Absolutely. And we've just got a paper coming out soon in Nature Medicine on 200 people with melanoma who were on end-stage melanoma, really severe ones, and showed that their response was directly related to the state of their gut microbes. And so
response to a checkpoint inhibitor and immunotherapy?
Yes, to checkpoint inhibitors. So it's the largest study ever done. It was a big consortium across the UK and the Netherlands. And it really highlighted exactly how important this. So knowing about your gut microbes and knowing about your diet is literally life-changing. It's the difference for these people between life and death. And so that's why in many of the cancer hospitals, they're now taking fecal transplants, giving auto transplants, all this kind of stuff. And I think we just need to move on as fast as we can to try and unpick this, because undoubtedly cancer is all related to the immune system as well. And the ability, if you've got a healthy gut microbiome that's fed properly by the right diet for you, I think your immune cells will be fighting those early cancers off, and that we need to just titrate that all together. So it's an extremely exciting time, and and we could talk about this for hours.
It is so profoundly important from a research perspective, and I think both you and I, being physicians and scientists, I think that in just this conversation, I find it incredibly exciting, but also humbling to realize how much more we have to learn, and yet how we've been operating in terms of the practice of medicine without realizing that there are these truths that have been hidden in plain sight, and we just haven't had the tools to get at them. So I congratulate you for taking that leap as you have in your career, from being kind of a skeptic to a leader, a pioneer, and also to be able to take the ideas and I would say actualize them with the assistance of your business partners to be able to scale the ideas from the traditional academic pursuit into something that can really change lives. So exciting to have this conversation with you, and I'm looking to continue our conversation.
Yeah, no, it's been great. So thank you so much for allowing us to chat together. It's been great, and I've been a big fan of you and your book, Eat to Beat Disease, New York Times bestseller. So shows we have very, very similar ideas along these thoughts. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and join this series. And if you want to learn more about ZOE, do head to joinzoe.com. That's the website, Join ZOE, JOINZOE, or ZOE, as you'd say, .com. And use the code GUTCHECKERS, Gut Check Series, so code Gut Check Series, one word, to get 10% off this program, which is a great offer. And and if you want to learn more, all our books are out there. Spoon-Fed is my latest, and Eat to Beat Disease, if you want to learn more about the microbiome and aging and all those other things. So thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to chatting to you again.